What's the least amount of throws to beat Pikmin 4? I'm here to answer that and more. We're also going to take it a step further and see what the least amount of Pikmin uses are. What I mean by this is every time a Pikmin is thrown, the Pikmin use count goes up by 1. But if we rush with 100 Pikmin on Ochi's back, that brings the Pikmin use count up by 100. On top of that, no glow Pikmin or Dandori Pikmin are allowed to be used, period. This just makes it a lot easier to track the Pikmin that I have and the amount of times I've used them. I've seen a lot of no Pikmin, least Pikmin, or low throw challenges using these ones and not counting them as uses, which in my eyes is cheating. Not only that, but I'll also be counting item uses as well, since these are also technically throws. So there will be a count for both Pikmin and items used. There will also be some theoretical lowest possible throughout the video, which I'll explain as they arise. With that out of the way, let's move on to the tutorial. There are a couple things in the tutorial that are forced upon you. For starters, there are a total of 6 Pikmin that must be collected in the Olimar section, and there's absolutely no way to avoid them. You can't jump over the ledge at the beginning, so the 5 red Pikmin in the pot must be collected, and you actually have to whistle all of them, you can't just whistle 1 or 2. The blue Pikmin is also required to be collected on your way up to go fight the spiky boy, and you don't actually have to use the Pikmin during this fight, it just takes a little bit more time. Once that fellow is defeated, you can move on to the next tutorial with the rescue cube. One of the treasures here can be collected without Pikmin, but the other two simply cannot. The console can be knocked down, and using Ochi's head, you can move it all the way to the ship, but if you don't meet the rate requirement, it won't get picked up and collected, forcing you to at least increase your Pikmin count to 7 and throw 7 of them to pick up the console. The bell also requires increasing your Pikmin uses up to 12, since you have to throw 5 of them up there. However, because this portion is scripted and the controls are limited in some areas, like you literally can't use the disband feature during the Olimar section, I'll have a couple running totals throughout the video. A total Pikmin uses that I do during this run, and a minimum amount of Pikmin uses, which will exclude the tutorial, since if there was a skip button you wouldn't have had to do this in the first place. Now the real game actually begins, and in order for Ochi to grow up, giving you access to more abilities, you need to save at least 1 castaway. There are currently only 2 that can be saved with Ochi in small form. The less common one is using red Pikmin, but that requires a bunch of throws. Even if you throw perfectly, it's at least a minimum of 3. The second option is the more common one, and that is in Last Frost Cavern. Normally you'd use an ice Pikmin to freeze the jello, but ice enemies also have the ability to freeze the jelly. Once frozen, the jello can be destroyed by rushing it with Ochi, and the castaway can be saved. Here's the thing, pushing the icy blowhog by walking into it isn't possible, and unlike other enemies, this one doesn't chase, it's simply locked in one position. But this can be used to our advantage. By using the refreshing goo treasure, you can place it in a way that allows you to slowly push the blowhog towards the hydro jelly. Biggest problem here is I was doing this for 40 minutes and only managed to push him a little bit. Then he started pathing around to hit the ice pick. So it is 100% possible, but it's going to take multiple hours, and you need to be very strategic on how you place it to make sure the ice Pikmin still have a clear line of sight to him, so he decides not to path around the goo. And this is what I meant by theoretical lowest. For the sake of my run, I'm increasing Pikmin uses to 13 because I simply don't have the time to be pushing that, but the lowest possible at this point is 12, and technically even 0 if we would have skipped the tutorial. Next up, we teach Ochi how to swim as early on as possible, and then we'll use him to collect raw material piles, which takes a very long time since he's already slower than regular Pikmin, but then he also needs to run from the pile to the ship, and then back from the ship to the pile. So a stack of 20 materials takes 40 times longer than you would if you would have used Pikmin, which means instead of taking 1 minute to collect 20 raw material, it now takes 40 minutes. Upgrading Ochi to 10 strength is the first and most important thing, as it allows for more treasures to be collected. Many of the treasures require a bit of thinking to collect, but it's actually very surprising the amount that you can get without Pikmin. Our first and most important goal would be to hit that 1500 Sparklium in order to unlock the second area, which greatly expands my possibilities, as I'm currently exhausting most of them, as I can't really build any structures since I need all the raw materials just for upgrading Ochi. Getting to Blossoming Arcadia was huge, and the standard strategy of this lowest Pikmin run started to shape up. Step 1. Peacefully conquer the area by eliminating local wildlife. Step 2. Collect treasures to increase Sparklium. Step 3. Collect any raw material nearby. Step 4. Go into the cave nearby at the end of the day to maximize a day's productivity. Once in the cave, make sure you collect all the treasures, raw materials, and castaways to continue to upgrade the MVP of this video, Most Valuable Pup. And step 5, use the rest of the day to collect more raw material or move the base to a better location so you can start the following in a better position. I kept following this 5-step plan to achieve world domination with Ochi until I met the first boss of the run, the Fulix. This one isn't hard, and it just involved me knowing the mechanics and trying to deal as much damage as possible during each of its phases. And with that, Dingo is saved, and we can start using his Dandori powers in just a bit. Before clearing everything possible, I really needed to collect more raw material, so that's what I did for a couple of hours. And I used those to build a couple of bridges to open up some required areas for this run. Now, this isn't a 100% run. In fact, 100% is impossible while trying to keep the lowest amount. However, getting as many upgrades as possible is paramount for this, especially since Ochi is going to be doing basically everything. Going back and collecting items I couldn't before thanks to my newly found abilities, after that, going to our first Dandori challenge. Now, this early into the run, Ochi is very weak, and remember, we have to disband all Pikmin right away during these challenges and just use one dog for all of these events. You can come pretty close to winning, so it might be possible, but it might also just be a pipe dream of winning. So we used Dingo. Now, Dingo can be used to progress in Dandori battles when you fail. This is just a cutscene, so no Pikmin gets used, though he canonically uses bomb rocks, so we'll add a Dingo counter just because it's technically a use of something. After that, bomb rocks can be used, increasing the item uses by 3, and going into another Dandori event. Now, unlike the Dandori battles, all of these timed ones are basically impossible to do solo with Ochi. This is a pretty big contrast because apart from the first battle against Olimar, all the rest of them can actually be completed with just Ochi, so our Dingo uses jump up to 2. Collecting raw material was again the next step, and this proceeded for 4 hours. I also used a bomb rock to take down a crystal wall. And this is the perfect time to bring up something else that is very important in this run, the Pebble Pitcher. Now, I personally don't have a second Joy-Con, so I wasn't really able to use this, but the Pebble Pitcher is able to defeat every enemy in the game apart from the final boss. However, it does need to use items for a few of them. The only walls I don't think the rocks can break from the Pebble Pitcher is the bomb rock or concrete one that was just shown earlier. A couple more battles took place and entering more caves to collect more treasures while I ignored any and all Pikmin within these areas. The first boss was easy enough to defeat, but I had to leave the cave for now since I knew Ochi wasn't strong enough to fight the final boss just yet. And while the Pebble Pitcher would have made quick work of this, again I didn't really use it, so you won't see it in practice within this video. Going to challenge Olimar for the second time is a completely different story than the first, as you can win this one if your Dandori is good enough. And with that battle complete, it is time to go to Serene Shores. Seafloor Resort is a slow process, but once you're at the bottom you can battle the Master Hawk, get the castaway, and gently ram them in the head a bunch of times in order to get them out of the water. The reason I'm doing this is because at this point I don't have Ochi's swim upgrade that allows them to pick up items within water. Once we go above ground, there's more item collecting and battling that took place with the lowered tide. Going back to Blossoming Arcadia, Dingo had to be used for a third time, and with that, Ochi would get some much needed upgrades. Groovy was next, but unfortunately once you hit this floor, you kinda get stuck without using Pikmin. So I'd have to come back to this later once I discovered how to do the skip. To the engulfed castle it was. Here, the most dangerous mechanic of keeping blue Pikmin alive is non-existent, and you just go around collecting everything slowly. Once the wraith arrives, you keep doing that while avoiding the wraith. Once you reach the bottom, you get the very anticlimactic ending of being unable to fight the boss, thanks to not wanting to increase our Pikmin uses. At this point, I had been sent the skip and how to actually get to Groovy. OBS actually glitched, leaving my footage being a single still frame of my failure, but I went back and did the skip properly again. Just imagine the box wasn't already pushed down. I kept making my way further and further into the cave until I finally arrived at Groovy. And while Groovy is the GOAT, he still needed to be defeated. With him down, Yanni would be saved and night missions become available. Another Dingo use, and this castaway had to be left behind like many of his forefathers because again, Ochi can't pick up items in the water just yet. So we did another battle against Olimar, and as I mentioned earlier, these battles keep getting easier as Ochi gets more upgrades, so I won by a pretty large margin. The Leafling also needed me to have the swim upgrade though. So to get more pup drive, we went to the night missions. The thing about the night missions is you can't directly control Ochi because as soon as you swapped him, glow Pikmin come too, and you'll start throwing them instead of biting with Ochi. Now, of course, the Pebble Pitcher solos all of the night expeditions with ease, but again, I don't really use it. The first night is doable with just Ochi, but the second night isn't at Ochi's current level, so I had to use Dingo for a 5th time. I will however mention that I'm going to be using the theoretical lowest for Dingo counters as well now, since none of the night missions should be adding to this number assuming you're using the pitcher. The third mission is simple and it was very easy to run out the timer. Thanks to those pup drive points, I could finally get the swim upgrade, which allows me to break even and get the 4 castaways that I had to leave drowning before. But this also allowed me to collect more treasures, helping me reach those sparklium goals. Another night expedition where I used Dingo thanks to Puffy Blowhogs being much stronger than I expected, and the Serene Shores also had a bunch of flying problems, so Dingo would have to use bomb rocks to solve these. Hero's Hideaway was up next, with moss and all other hazards being no issue at this point since Ochi is immune to all of them. Plunder Palace happened and some bread bugs did what bread bugs do. This actually showcases a bit of the scheming needed for this run, since there are a bunch of jumps that you can actually do without needing Pikmin. Now, this enemy here blocked my run, but Pebble Pitcher is a simple solution in order to continue down the cave and fight the giant bread bug. The rest of Hero's Hideaway involves me collecting 2 of the 3 cards, because you don't actually need all the cards collected in order to open the vault. You can in fact just guess and it'll open right away, but knowing 2 of the numbers makes this significantly easier. For whatever reason, the vault actually needs Pikmin to open it. Pick Carrots, Ochi, Pebble Pitcher, or any other item simply does not work. The code I happened to get had a total of 15 throws in order to open it, but this number is random every single time you do the run, meaning theoretically the lowest you could get are the numbers 1, 2, and 3 in any random order, giving you 6 throws instead of 15. Seeing Tomato Man himself, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it. And in fact, Olimar was a bit too powerful here, and the game constantly kept giving me Glow Pikmin as a power-up because if you have low Pikmin, which is obviously the case in this run, it continues to give you Glow Pikmin as it tries to make up for that deficit. And as I mentioned before, once you pop that Glow Pikmin power-up, you lose the ability to directly control Ochi, so it's more of a power down. After losing a few times, I went to go lose in another few night expeditions. So I went back to the old areas, and using some items, I opened those areas as well. The Emperor Bull blocks have a very odd hitbox, but apart from that, they're easy to take down. As I grinded more raw material for 5 hours straight, I thought to myself, this challenge sucks. And I went to collect more treasures and castaways to get Ochi ready for the final showdown against Olimar. I had to use an Ice Bomb Rack here as this enemy wasn't able to be lured over to freeze this jello. And another item had to be used because the captain can't break ice by punching it without having the freeze resistant upgrade. The Pebble Pitcher would have worked here. This happened twice, well, 3 times actually. This boss was very easy as it couldn't deal any damage at all to me apart from the falling icicles, so it was only a matter of time until it was taken down. Another night expedition and another Dingo use thanks to the flyer. And 1 more Ice Bomb Rock to get to another Dandori battle so I could let Dingo do it for me. As an aside, I honestly don't know if the time challenges are doable with the Pebble Pitcher since I know they can increase Ochi's rate of carrying objects. So maybe Dingo uses could theoretically drop to 0, but we're just gonna keep the lowest as 5 for now. Anyways, the final required ice bombs would be used to unlock the 2nd floor of this cave and the most important area in a no Pikmin or lowest throw run. And I used another Ice Bomb Rock here just to get the castaway in order to improve Ochi again. Doppelganger's Den was next up, and I slowly made my way to the final boss. This guy is annoying to fight as you have to knock off the gold a bunch of times before finally being able to break all of it. Once that happens, you can bite the exposed red spots until they shrink and become even harder to hit. It's still possible to hit the sides, but the top one is not. Of course, the Pebble Pitcher can be used here as well. The night mission I did was actually pretty easy, which is odd because some of the higher difficulty ones are actually easier, at least when not using Pikmin. And now it was time to test Ochi's skills. With him upgraded as much as possible without increasing the Pikmin throws or uses past 18 in this run, or the theoretical lowest so far, the battle would begin. This round was super close, so I knew a win was 100% possible. With a couple of lucky plays, I was able to defeat Olimar with only Ochi. Now, this gives us the first ending with these stats. But let's be honest, this isn't actually beating Pikmin 4. And the first ending in a game is kind of a cheap cop-out for a challenge run like this. It'd be like taking the first ending from Pikmin 2 when everybody knows you gotta fight Louie and the Titan Dweevil. So, I farmed for a few hours getting more raw material in prep for the next area. Once Giant's Hearth was unlocked, there was actually only a couple of things I could do because the hay bales require fire starters or pushing enemies to burn them down, Man at Legs was thankfully one of those bosses I could fight here. An ambulance needed to be called, but not for Ochi, because Ochi was absolutely violating my man. Louis was the next guy to get humiliated, with me grabbing victory with the jaws of Ochi. That's Giant's Hearth, onto Primordial Thicket. Baldi was an easy takedown, though fairly time consuming. And another dingo use I had to use, as I lost this one getting 161 out of the minimum 200, which really makes me think that with the Pebble Pitcher, dingo uses could be dropped down to 0, but I guess we'll never know. I went around finishing up some of the night missions and prepared to battle Louis. In prep for the battle, Ochi needs to learn the Swallow upgrade, which can simply be acquired by talking to Olimar. If you try to battle him without the upgrade, it's almost impossible to win, but with the Swallow upgrade, it's actually fairly easy to take down Louis, assuming you've got the Dandori skills. Everyone knows at this point, there's just a couple of things left to do, and we're reaching that endgame. So I went around finishing everything and anything I could do without increasing either of my throws or item use counts, apart from collecting the 2 Mamuda treasures since those are my favorite guys and I wasn't going to fight them. Moving on to Cavern for a King, this would be a lengthy process and there would be some prep work needed once I made it to the second last floor. The first 3 sub-levels are easy and 100% possible with just Ochi, assuming you're patient enough. Sub-level 4 has a very easy boss and a couple of enemies, but the bridge here couldn't be brought down without Pikmin, and increasing our Pikmin uses by 20 is just way too much. So I made an investment in purple Pikmin. By using 2 throws and getting these purple Pikmin, you now only have to throw 2 of them to bring down the bridge, which cuts down our throws by 16. And it doesn't increase our 7 total Pikmin that we've had since the start of the run, but instead of having 7 reds, now we have 5 and 2 purples. The purples tagged along for the ride, and I had to be very cautious clearing out the enemies. Sub-level 6 required purple Pikmin to be thrown again, and it also needed an ice bomb rock in order to progress. On level 7, it was easy enough to send those blowhogs to heaven. Level 8, I was hoping to get past this guy without a fight, but a fight was required. The lowest items without the Pebble Pitcher ended up being 3 bomb rocks if you play properly. Sub-level 9 and 10 with Man at Legs and the Prog were easy compared to the rump up that we just fought, and level 11 tests your jumping skills, with level 12 doing absolutely nothing. 13 involves the gold dude, exact same method as last time, where you have to damage the gold, and if he happens to glitch like he did for me, well, it sucks to be him, but it makes my job a lot easier. You can also just freeze him and rush him with Ochi, saving you a bunch of times, but the lowest would be the Pebble Pitcher method. Baldi is another test of patience with your dogging ability. Dogging? What does that even mean? With your dodging ability. So, once he's defeated, it's time for the most interesting floor on this entire run. The Water Wraith floor. You might think that purple Pikmin are required for this floor, and you'd actually be wrong. You see, there's a method where you can throw a mine behind the Water Wraith about 1 Ochi's distance away, an ice bomb rock in about a 3-frame window after the Wraith's head has come up after slamming the roller, and then you have another 3-ish frame window to throw a second bomb rock as the Wraith starts to move. That most recent bomb that you threw causes the Wraith to get a bit of airtime if you walk forward as you throw it. This causes the Wraith to freeze and its rollers to die or break due to the standard frozen enemy falling shatter mechanic. The mine is used to increase and reset the Wraith's airtime, allowing the second bomb to explode, freezing it and causing it to die to the shatter mechanic again. This is the only way to defeat these fellows without the use of purple Pikmin. And it takes time to master, but it's consistent once you know it. At this point, I decided it was time to material farm in the most important spot. This is because once you exhaust all the raw materials throughout all the locations, there's only the little dig up piles that you can get in order to increase your raw material. And the closest one to the landing site is this one that I mentioned earlier in Sun-Speckled Terrace. Now it's only worth going after the closest one since doing both results in an 8-minute run for 20 raw material, and the closest is about 3 minutes for 10. The reason I needed to farm all these raw material is because of the ancient Sirehound. You see, each phase of the Sirehound requires 50 bomb rocks to beat. Now, using 2 purples to bring down the tail also works, and then rushing with a squad of 100 Pikmin, but that increases Pikmin uses by 102 each time, and you need about 3 of them per phase, so 50 bombs is significantly less. Not only that, but if the Sirehound eats a bomb rock, it does 5 times the amount of damage, meaning you'd only need 10 bomb rocks per phase. However, the first phase is the only consistent one for his eating or chomp attack, so while it's technically possible to do without doing the 250 bomb rocks, realistically you're gonna need around 210. Not only that, but you're most likely going to need mines on the 5th phase, which are more expensive than regular bomb rocks. This is because if he happens to fly away, you just wasted a bomb. With that knowledge, you need over 2,000 raw material, which ended up taking over 12 hours of me grinding this one spot. It absolutely sucked, but I got it done. The next floor was the Nintendo's developers' attempt at a difficult boss fight, but I wasn't impressed. Alright, I'm sorry. The Emperor was an easy fight, and the second last floor is just a rest floor, so on to the final one. First phase is nice as you can throw bomb rocks into the Sire Hound's mouth as it charges at you. Unfortunately, Pikmin 4 has very clunky movement, so you can't dodge this and you're going to take damage. However, if you stand near the edge, you won't get chomped, and that will actually save you from getting hit. The second phase is where the boss no longer consistently does the chomp attack, along with the third and fourth. He does happen to do it around once every 10 minutes, if you're just using Ochi. If you use the captain, you can bait him and this will happen a little bit more consistently, but in our case I just ended up throwing bomb rocks as that's a lot easier. So you throw around 5 bomb rocks at a time or else the damage doesn't properly get added, so you just dodge the snowball attack during the ice phase, dodge literally nothing during the electricity phase, and you can actually spam bomb rocks during the fire phase as you don't have to dodge here and they explode on impact. The final phase simply does not have a chomp attack, so you're going to have to use the 50 mines or bombs if you place them properly. You can stick around 3 mines on his tail each time. Once that's done, the boss is finally defeated. So, what's the least amount of throws required to beat Pikmin 4? Well, here are all the totals, with the theoretical lowest being 12 Pikmin throws, 108 items, and 6 dingo uses. Apart from the Pikmin, it might actually be possible to reduce the others. Subscribe and like for more. Until next time.